Hi everybody, Billy Chitkin here, and I wanted to make this tutorial today to show off how scripting inside of Cinema 4D can really help us as artists, even if we don't have any formal scripting experience. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so here we are inside of Cinema 4D, and there's a couple things we're going to need to open up to get going. So we're going to go to the script, and we're going to open the script log and the script manager. Okay, so if I just start up a new script and we clear that out. Okay, so pretty much the basis for this tutorial is how we can utilize this script log to make ourselves our own tools, just to make things more efficient and more user-friendly inside of Cinema. I use a number of these different scripts myself every day, and over the years I have figured out how to kind of cobble some of these things together, and I have never learned any scripting language formally. I have no formal training in this stuff, so follow along and we will see what's going on. Okay, so if we move these off to the side and we just start doing some basic things in Cinema, for example, I'm going to make a cube, and then we're going to make this cube editable, and then we're going to switch to edge mode, and then we're going to use our knife tool to make a loop cut. Okay, so this is pretty basic and isn't necessarily related to the tutorial itself, but what I want to point out here is this script log, we can see in these 4 lines, has kept a running tally basically of what has been going on so far in our scene. We have a command that made our cube, and then we made our cube editable, and then we switch to edge mode, and then we switch to our knife tool. So hopefully you can kind of get an idea of where this is going. Basically, a bulk of the scripts that I have kind of figured out how to make for myself are more or less like a Photoshop action or a macro, basically. It is just a series of basic things, and over time, those basic little things can add up to more improve your workflow, make your time a little bit more efficient, so on and so forth. A lot of people are familiar with setting up their own custom commands, assigning hotkeys to various tools, various functions, even docking custom buttons onto their shelf, for example. But I think that scripting, even without any formal knowledge, can represent another tool in our arsenal for becoming more efficient artists. So let's get into something that is maybe a little bit more practical. And for me, that is making a camera and then making a Redshift camera tag. If you are an Octane user, this is kind of probably a similar thing that you might have to do sometimes. So let's figure out how to make that. So we're going to delete our cube and kind of empty out our script log, and we're going to start with a fresh script. So this hello world message can be kind of removed out of the script log, and let's make our camera. So we made our camera, and we see the first command is kind of input into this menu. And then if we just go about our normal, kind of day, and we assign a Redshift camera tag to it, we can see that these 3 lines of code all correspond to making a camera and then making the Redshift camera tag. So if we were to copy these 3, just Control C, and then if we come over here and Control V to paste, you want to make sure that you obey the same amount of indentation and stuff. Again, this isn't a formal scripting tutorial. I have figured out some of these sorts of rules on my own, but this is kind of just going off of a baseline of no knowledge at all. So we want to just replicate how many indentations or spaces. Okay, cool. So if we start with a fresh setup and we execute this script, we will see that it has made us a camera and it is assigned a redshift camera tag. Okay, so this is a very basic example, but again, this kind of saves us a handful of clicks of making our camera and then, right-clicking, scrolling through the menu, yada yada. So if we wanted to actually save this out, we would click Save, and then that'll open up your preference script folder. You can input a name. I already have this particular script made, and I assigned a little icon for it, just the same icon from the Redshift documentation folder. So that's a cool little thing, and that's all good. So let's move on to another example of something that we can make ourselves solely through copy and paste from the script log. We have a new Python document. We can, again, delete out that sample line. One thing that I've done a gazillion times, if we have sort of an object, and let's just say that it has been moved away from our world axis. Okay, so it's not at the 0 point, and if we make this editable, and we move the anchor point off somewhere wild, okay. For the most part, we know that we would need to run the command, mesh, axis center, center axis 2, and then we would most likely, so center axis 2, and then we would reset PSR. Okay, right? So that's a pretty common example of something that we most often will want to do, reset the anchor point and then reset the position of this object to the world center. There's a little bit of a problem if we see in the script log, we got the first portion of that, macro, for example, that we want to set up. It was the center axis 2. And the script log also noted the fact that we used Commander, the Shift-C search bar to enter a command, but it wasn't able to parse what that actual command was. So how do we go about remaking this kind of by hand using stuff that the script log actually can recognize? So if we just go to our coordinates and we enter in 0 for all of our different position values, so 0, tab, 0, tab, 0, and we'll see that over here on the script log that we are starting to get these commands for resetting the base object relative position to 0. Okay, so we're starting to get somewhere. So if we take our first line, which was the center axis 2, we can paste that. And then if we want to grab these 3, so this would be the equivalent of reset P, position only. So we'll enter in, I'm just going to enter in a line break just to be careful. Okay, that is, in its current form, this script is reset the axis point and then reset the position only. If we want to add in that S, the scale values, we can do 1 tab, 1 tab, 1 tab, and we will have our 3 scale values, and then we can follow that same line of logic for the rotation values. 0, tab, 0, tab, 0, tab. And then now we have our position values as well. Or sorry, we have our scale and rotation values. So at this point, we have the full equivalent of running the reset axis or center axis command and then all 3 components of the reset PSR. So if we were to run this same script and assign it a name, we would then have something that we could now assign to our doc. So I am just going to switch to my version, which I have named 0 position, and we see that I only have the position and the center axis values. And while we're in here, it's actually important that we input this line, which was, this is just Python telling Cinema which object is currently active. Basically, if you run this script, it'll just affect whatever item is currently selected. So now, if we go to our custom commands menu, we can see whatever you named your version of the script, in my case, 0 position. So here's my script. I can then middle click and drag this up onto my dock, or I can assign it a hotkey, any number of things from here on out, and I can start saving myself a handful of clicks. So what do I mean by scripting can allow us to do something that Cinema natively doesn't allow us to do? So for example, if you have a complex scene full of a very populated hierarchy, I'm sure you will be familiar with the scroll to first active command, which allows you to select an object in the viewport, run that command, and then it will auto open up your hierarchy to reveal that exact object. Well, I'm sure you'll notice if we search scroll to first active, here in our custom commands menu, we see that here on this column, it says the scroll to first active command is limited to the object manager. And that is actually, as far as I'm aware, a functionality that we cannot work around, natively at least. If you hit any of these hotkeys that are assigned to this command, your mouse has to be focused over the objects menu, because those same shortcuts have different commands if your mouse is placed over the viewport. Again, a handful of commands in Cinema are context sensitive. So what if, for example, you want to change that and you want to force the scroll to first active command to operate under the same key no matter where your mouse is placed? Well, again, scripting, even in a very simple form, can work around that. So let's jump to my script. So I have one called STFA, which is just the first letter of scroll to first active. So here we can see it's a very simple one-line script, just like previously. So if we run our scroll to first active, we see that this item right here from our script log is exactly here we are in the script manager. So anytime I use my scroll to first active shortcut, which I have keybound to S, it will work no matter where my mouse is dependent. It can be over the materials menu, the viewport, the attribute panel, the objects window, so on and so forth. So this is an example of something that scripting can do that by default Cinema doesn't want us to do. Another example of that is changing layouts. I'm sure we're familiar with, using different layouts depending on if maybe we're modeling or if we're working in a specific render engine, so on and so forth. I have a handful of scripts as well. I've got my UVing layout, I've got my Redshift layout, I've got my default workspace, so on and so forth. If we search for the name of one of these layouts in our customized commands menu, you'll recognize that these are not populated in this list of commands. We can search for the name of the layout, or we can search for the word layout itself, and all we're getting is the commands for saving and saving layouts, not actually switching to a particular layout. So this is an example of something that will require a little bit of Googling on your part if you aren't familiar with Python natively. But again, I'm not familiar with Python at all, and so I found this same information thankfully through forums and websites online that people post this sort of information. So if you have an idea, most likely that answer exists out in the world. It's just a matter of you finding it. If we pop open the script for my regular layout switch, we'll see that this has a little bit of that code, again, that I said you would need to find online, and I believe that I actually found the exact forum thread. So I just searched on Google Cinema 4D layout Python script, and this search result from Plugin Cafe actually has the exact syntax that you need. So if you would like to do this yourself, you can find this forum thread and copy and paste this portion of the code into your script manager. And then again, the ending here where it's specifying the layout name, that is going to be, context sensitive to what you are going to be naming your layout. So what we can do with this is, similar to the previous example with the scroll to first active, we have this one line of Python code, which now, because it has been saved in our script manager, it is now accessible to the Customize Commands menu. And so you'll see that I don't actually have a shortcut assigned to any of my layouts. I've got a UV layout, a regular layout, a Redshift layout, for example. I actually use the global pop-up menu, which is the V key. And if I mouse up here, I have my 3 layouts. I also have my create Redshift camera script and a handful of other, sort of out-of-the-box Redshift things. If you would like a tutorial on how to use or customize the global pop-ups menu, I can certainly make that. I want to thank you for watching. I think a lot of these tools, even again, for people who have no knowledge of scripting at all, this is really powerful stuff, and it'll help you, it'll help you become a little bit more efficient if you put some of this stuff to good use. So thank you, and see you in the next one.
Brograph.com, an online resource for learning Cinema 4D, After Effects, and other motion graphics tools specifically catered to help you prevail as a motion graphic designer.
What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph motion graphics tutorial.
With tutorials, plugins, and now a podcast with tens of thousands of listeners worldwide.
Yeah, it's a great community to be part of.
We give you professional time-saving tips, industry news, interviews, shortcuts, and lessons that help keep you current in the world of motion design.
Throw in HDR Studio, take the render settings, pick the HDR, put in a reflection, and gorgeous.
I love projects that scare me. When our art director comes to us and asks for something that I had never done before, man, it gets me pumped.
Our weekly long-form podcast will give you the latest news, help you in your file management, hardware configuration, and client relations. Learn about the latest render engines, modeling techniques, and workflow integration while staying entertained.
Real nice banana.
Ah, that's so funny. All right. I'm going to live forever.
Our Brograph Talks are a chance to see the way industry leaders from around the globe are changing the face of motion design.
Sometimes you got to make stuff that you're not going to put on your reel, and I'm not here to judge.
The podcasts and talks include people like Beeple, Barton Damer, Nick Campbell, Andrew Kramer, David Ariev, Chad Ashley, Paul Babb, EJ Hassenfrost, Mitch Myers, Chris Schmidt, Jules Urbach, Cornelius Dammert, David Brodeur, Andy Needham, Caitlin Kaju, Zubair Parker, Noseman, Ryan Bean, Casey Hupke, Nick Lyons, Sage, Joey Korenman, Jeremy Cox, Rick Barrett, John Dickinson, Matthias Omatola, Patrick Goski, Brandon Clements, Steve Teeple, Tom Glimpse, Patrick Longstreet, Julia Simone, Devin Coe, Al Heck, and even Deadmau5.
You get that render done. Yeah, you better frame what?
Our Brograph breakdowns go behind the projects and give you an insight on what it's like to manage and maintain your own personal business or work for a large company. Join us for live sessions, check out our useful plugins, watch time-lapse projects, interact with us, and send us email questions and topic ideas. Or just hit the Rando Render button and do an imaginative daily that'll keep you on your toes.
Take all your dreams and let's do it!
Subscribe today and get automatic updates on the latest tutorials, tricks, tips, and inspiration brought to you by industry professionals Dave Koss and Matt Milstead.
We don't care how you get here, folks. Just get here.
Subscribe now to Brograph Tutorials.
pretty good, I guess.